Look back at dangerous malware targeting utilities now.
Hey Bindu, sounds like you have an interesting story on some recent targeted attacks for us.
Yes, Tom, so utilities has been a space that is constantly been a target, and three major utilities have experienced this in the last month, is what Proofpoint has elaborated on. So, we talk a lot about spearfishing, and we talk a lot about how organizations, experience this, and, to some extent we've all sort of gotten numb to this, right? Uncomfortably numb, in fact. This is interesting because this is a targeted spearfishing campaign that is done by initial attack vector being social engineering. They knew exactly which employee to target, and the email comes in the form of a National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying, right? So this is a legitimate authority that usually sends out typically not through emails, test results for employees that have taken the exam. So this targeted a couple of employees within each of these utilities, had them open a Word document that seems pretty legitimate by saying results, right? And then whatever you need because you failed this exam to be able to apply for licensing. So typical user behavior, you tend to click on this thinking, oh, I took this exam, or I need to make sure that I apply for this license. And what it does is, the interesting thing about this is it's called look back malware, but it's never seen before malware. It's not like we've seen this before. So the fact that it's basically a Trojan that gets downloaded after, and then it's causing havoc amongst the systems that it's installed on.
Phishing is such an interesting concept because it's very easy to make almost anyone fall for a phishing scam. It just has to be targeted enough.
We've said this time and again, right? Don't click on a Word document and open it. Don't let enable macros and install it. But given that this research has been done, and this type of exploitation is still happening, we want to bring it up to the forefront because this was a spear phishing campaign. It's very well crafted, and it's got this email attachment that had all the necessary details for somebody to believe that this is legitimate. But we want to make sure that especially critical infrastructure utilities, we talk about IoT attacks, we talk about all of these cutting edge zero-day exploits. This is fairly simple, where they're trying to get access to one of the systems there. It follows all the methods of a typical rat by sort of taking command and control, getting all the system information, rebooting, going undetected. But the reason I thought the story was still relevant for us, even though we have done so many of these phishing campaigns, is the attackers are relentless, right? They're going to go after every major target that they possibly can, and especially in a sector like utilities where you have a different types of employees that may not all be aware in terms of security. Their job function may not require them to be as security savvy, but we go back to saying, hey, every one of us working in these organizations contributes to the security. Don't open these attachments. Think about one of the neat things is the domain was sort of slightly modified. Instead of saying nces.org, it said .com, but you don't spot that. Then the organization never emails results. So this is again one of those one-offs. Like why are they emailing results suddenly this year, right? Things that we don't think about while we are clicking on that. So I thought it was interesting to see what was happening here.
No matter how much we talk about phishing and being cognizant of it, I think maybe sometimes we'll have to make the message even more tailored to specific roles within the company. For the bad guys, some of these things, they don't even care who gets it, because there's always going to be a shipping department or building services or electrical department, and somebody, it will be relevant to them. It might be a small percentage, but unfortunately, that's how you get into the door.
Yeah, and we talk about security awareness and training, right? We say this all along, make sure that your employees are trained, but we all know this, right? Like clicking through a CBT is not really going to have that sticky factor, right? You want to conduct these social engineering engagements, have these samples of population, right? Your security awareness and training cannot be just for the IT folks and the finance folks because they have these sensitive information. It has to scale across the organization, and it's not saying, hey, don't click on a email that looks illegitimate, right? explain to them the impact of potential scenarios that could happen, right? It could, like for example, I was talking to somebody in procurement who said, I am going to click on a PDF or an email that says invoice. That's my job function, right? I am going to, like every email that comes in, then you'll have to have the technical controls in place to be able to, one, filter out these emails so it doesn't reach, and two, to be able to constantly educate them on potentials of identifying, some of these, where is it coming from, what domain is it, things like that, which we used to think is only meant for the IT technical administrators. But today, every one of us has to know it because we all have access to all of this.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bindu, and fascinating article without a doubt. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with just the energy industry and utility industry right now in general. And I think what we'll start to see hopefully here soon is a lot more development on internal practices in those types of organizations, because traditionally they may have not been getting the most attention towards security requirements and so forth over the past years and whatnot. But I definitely think this is an interesting approach by that particular adversary. And to your point, we can't quite blame the users for clicking those at all. Very good stories by both of you. It comes down to, almost in a way, having to rely on the technical aspects to reduce the likelihood that those users have to ever think about this type of thing, but controlling it in a way where we have the ability to respond, because something like this will somehow always make its way through. But fascinating article right now.
For people who are just trying to do their work and take the business, in a specific direction or do a specific business function, they might not be thinking about all the crazy security things that are out there. So we have to educate them, of course. We'll also have to educate them in a way that speaks to them and relates to them and the experience they're going through.